Hi there, my name is Henry Tenby. I am the creator of JetFlix, which is the world's largest all-aviation streaming service. And in this special video, I have a very historic presentation for you. We go back to 1959. There was a huge air show that was held at Las Vegas McCarran Airport, and it was actually called the World Congress of Flight, and it took place between April the 12th and April the 19th, 1959 at Las Vegas Airport. And over the decades, I've seen the occasional image from this special event, as there were some very great aircraft that appeared at this event, but never before have I seen pretty much an exhaustive or close to exhaustive collection of images from this amazing event. So I'm going to be sharing with you in this video these incredible images that were taken by William Crimmins Jr. And unfortunately, William is no longer with us, but he was a lifelong aviation photographer and military history fan from Baltimore, Maryland. And through the graciousness of his son, John, we're able to bring these images to you. If you have old color slides, old Kodachrome images, that have been sitting in a cupboard or closet for decades, these slides in many cases have historical significance to aviation fans. So if you have a collection of old slides, send me an email, let me know, and I'd be interested in acquiring those slides from you so that I can make videos like this for the viewing enjoyment of fellow aviation fans. I should point out that this air show, the aviation and flying events took place at McCarran Airport, but the trade show itself took place at the Las Vegas Convention Center. And this was the first ever convention to be held at the Las Vegas Convention Center. So that's a bit of neat Las Vegas history for you. And it was also the very first international air show that was to ever take place in the United States. So let's get on with the show, and I hope you enjoy the presentation. Back in 1959, the world was on the cusp of the mass global jet age, and the major manufacturers of jet airliners brought their biggest and best to the Las Vegas Air Show, including General Dynamics Convair, a division of San Diego, who brought their fast, beautiful Convair 880 jetliner, seen here. This particular aircraft, registration 803TW, was actually rolled off the assembly floor just a few weeks before this air show and flew for the first time literally just days before the air show. So the aircraft was absolutely brand spanking new, and the registration 803TW is very clearly visible here at the rear of the aircraft. Of course, the TW designated, meaning this aircraft was being delivered eventually to Trans World Airlines, TWA, which was owned by Howard Hughes. So TWA had a fleet of Convair 880s, which remained in service up until the fuel crunch of 1972-73. Convair General Dynamics used this airplane as a demonstrator for test purposes and certification purposes up until, I believe, the fall of 1961. So another couple years after these pictures were taken until the airplane actually went into regular scheduled airline service. Those of you with a keen eye will notice that this particular image was taken from the rear stairs of the DC-8 prototype. You can see the Douglas paint on the trailing edge of the wing. Also in the background, we have an American Airlines Lockheed Electra tail popping up. Yes, indeed, Douglas of Long Beach brought their DC-8 prototype to Las Vegas to showcase it to the public as well, as seen here, looking fabulous in the Douglas colors. And here we have some military men in uniform at the top of the stairs, deplaning the aircraft, having just probably toured through it. And in the background, we have a locally based Vegas airline, Bonanza Airlines, DC-3 in the background, with what appears to be a U.S. military twin Convair C-131 in the background as well. Here's a nice tail view of the Douglas DC-8 prototype, and in the background we have a nice display of the other attending heavy metal at this event. On the far right side, we have the B-58 Hustler, also from Convair. Surprisingly, Mr. Crimmins didn't have a shot of the B-58 in the collection. I'm not sure if that might surface at a later date. But that was a very impressive airplane. It was a supersonic nuclear bomber for the Air Force, and it was, of course, one generation ahead of the Boeing B-47 and B-52. And of course, we did have a B-47 at this air show, which you will see shortly. If you look carefully, you can see the tail of the B-47 on the far left, and also in the background, from the British side, we have a Royal Air Force Comet jetliner and an RAF Vulcan, also a very new-looking Lockheed C-121 Constellation. This is an absolutely fabulous shot of the Douglas Company Aero Commander posed beside their DC-8 that was at the air show. Notice the registration on the DC-8. It's N8038D. This was actually the fourth DC-8 off the Douglas production line. Douglas built 4 DC-8s for flight test purposes initially, and the registrations were, well, the very first one, the very first DC-8 built was N8008D. Then came N8018D, N8028D, and then this one, N8038D. So yeah, this was aircraft number 4, and these airplanes all eventually went to commercial airline operators once Douglas was finished with their flight test and certification purposes. Well, it's no contest that in the 1950s, Great Britain was number 2, or almost neck and neck with the United States in terms of jet engine and commercial and large jet aircraft development. So only naturally would the UK be interested in presenting their aircraft at this incredible air show. Here we have an RAF Vulcan XH502. The Vulcan seems to be drawing the attention of US military men in uniform. And a keen eye will notice on the far left-hand side, we have a Lockheed Constitution sitting with its upper emergency escape doors removed. Only 2 of the monstrous Lockheed Constitutions were ever built, and due to high operating costs, they were actually retired, I believe, in 1954. One airplane ended up ultimately down in Florida. The other one ended up here in Las Vegas at McCarran Field. And it sat there, I believe, from about mid-50s up until about 1969 when it was scrapped on site. It was sadly used as a large billboard for Alamo, which was a local airport FBO. And from what I read on the internet, Howard Hughes owned the property or the land that it was sitting on. It was under his orders that the airplane was scrapped. And here we have another fine view, close-up view of the Vulcan. Beautiful lines on that aircraft, just wonderful. And we have, again, US military men in uniform inspecting the underside of the aircraft. In the background, we have the Convair twin airliner, which was on display, as we'll see soon. This was a fabulous air show. Look in the background. There's 2 Convairs, old and new. The original, I think that's an FAA Convair, or maybe C-131. On the right, and on the left is the Canadair 540, they called it, which was the turbine-powered Convair. Here's the photo evidence that the RAF brought 2 different Vulcans to the Las Vegas Air Show. This is XH483, which clearly laid on a flight presentation for those present. So maybe the other aircraft was the static airplane, and this airplane was for the flight displays. But yeah, very impressive that the RAF went to the expense and effort to bring 2 Vulcans across the Atlantic to North America. It's my understanding that both of these Vulcans were then flown up the US West Coast to RCAF Station Sea Island and took place at an air show at Vancouver International Airport during this same period as well. Here's another very nice study of the Vulcan, a close-up view, and in the background we have a very nice looking factory new bare metal Lockheed C-121 Constellation. I did not find the Connie slide, a full view of the Connie slide within the collection. Maybe that exists and I might find it at a later date. Those of you with very keen eyes will notice the Century series in the background. There's a Starfighter, Voodoo, and F-106, all US Air Force. And here's a nice nose study of the Vulcan in the background. We've got a nose-on view of the Convair 880 with the TWA air stairs up to the forward door. And center frame, we have that FAA Convair in the background. the day glow scheme of the 1950s, very nice color scheme, and another slightly different nose view, and we can actually see the U.S. Air Force B-47 in the background and those Century Series fighters as well on the right side. And here's a very pleasing elevated view of the British Steel. We've got the Comet sitting beside the Vulcan. I'm guessing that the Comet was probably the support aircraft for the Vulcans. That makes a lot of sense. In addition to showing off the Comet, it had a practical purpose as well in attending the air show. These were complex aircraft, and the RAF would have needed to bring quite a number of operational, maintenance, ground techs, etc. on this trip, and the Comet would be the perfect jetliner for them to come along. Nice view, nice nose-on view here of the Comet, looking absolutely fantastic. I just love the Comet's lines. And here we have the representative aircraft from Boeing of Seattle. We've got a lovely Boeing B-47, and in the background we've got a KC-135 Stratotanker, looking absolutely lovely in the Las Vegas sunshine. It's hard to believe that they built just over 2,000 of these B-47 Stratojet bombers. The aircraft went into service in 1951 and was retired from the Strategic Air Command in 1969, so it had a good run. Notice the F-106 Delta Dart sitting on the right side of the wing there. And here we have a Republic Aviation F-105 Thunder Chief, also known as the Thud, in a very nice 1950s colorful scheme seen here at the air show. 833 Thuds were built between 1955 and 1964, and they were operational with the USAF between 55 and 1984. We now head over to Civvy Street, and here we have the Canadair CL66B, also known as the Convair Canadair 540. It was basically a handful of Convair 440 airframes that Montreal-based Canadair modified for Canadian use, primarily for the Royal Canadian Air Force. A number of airframes were configured with Elan Napier Rolls-Royce similar engines. They were very similar to the Rolls-Royce Dart. They were turbines, and the conversion really wasn't popular, didn't catch on. A few airplanes were assembled and delivered to the Royal Canadian Air Force. They did market the CL66, or the Elan Napier powered Convair, to airlines, and they obviously brought it to the air show to market to world airlines, but it was not a successful proposition, and it was not commercially viable. The only customer for the Elan Napier Convair, or CL66B, the modified Convair 440s, was about a dozen aircraft for the Royal Canadian Air Force. We're still on Civvy Street, and Lockheed Burbank flew in one of their Lockheed Electras in the colors of American Airlines. N6111A was the machine that was brought to the air show, looking absolutely fantastic with the bare metal, fresh from the factory. Records actually show that this aircraft was delivered to American on April the 16th, 59. So that's right about the time of the air show. I'm wondering if they delivered the airplane at the air show as a PR piece. Hard to tell. Anyhow, the aircraft remained in service with American Airlines right up until 1966, when it was sold to Air California. Fairchild of Hagerstown, Maryland, in the late 1950s, entered into a marketing arrangement with the Netherlands-based Fokker Aircraft Company to market the F-27, the Fokker F-27, and the aircraft was designated or redesignated as a Fairchild F-27. There were 3 prototypes, including this aircraft, N30F27, and this airplane was brought to the Las Vegas Airshow to market to potential buyers and to showcase to the public. The licensing agreement with Fokker allowed Fairchild to license build the F-27 at the Hagerstown facility, and it proved to be quite a successful aircraft, both with North American-based airlines and corporate operators. In total, 128 of the shorter body F-27s were built, and 78 of the stretched body FH-227s were built. As we downgauge in size, this is a de Havilland Dove, twin-engine Dove, built in the United Kingdom. It was a popular, I will call it as a regional or short-haul airliner. The aircraft could comfortably seat up to 11 passengers, and an amazing 544 examples were manufactured between 1946 and 1967. The aircraft was very popular with airlines and militaries alike, and surprisingly, it was actually one of, if not the most successful British post-war civilian aircraft. Even the Viscount, which was incredibly popular, had only 445 examples manufactured. Here we have a civilian-converted PBY-5A Catalina, or Canso. Looks like this aircraft has been converted to possibly corporate use and was being marketed in that capacity at the air show. The aerialvisuals.ca website suggests that this aircraft was struck off charge by the United States Navy in the mid-50s and was purchased by a gentleman by the name of Thomas W. Kendall of a One Catalina Limited of Laverne, California in 1956. This suggests that Mr. Kendall was probably going to be marketing the airplane and others like it for corporate and private use, and his business was in the refurbishment of former military Catalinas. Today, in the year 2025, this aircraft is permanently displayed as an exhibit at the San Diego Aerospace Museum. This is quite an interesting aircraft. It is the McKinnon conversion of the G-21 Grumman Goose. The registration is N150 Mike. Back in the 1950s, McKinnon Enterprises, based in Sandy, Oregon, recertified the aircraft as a G-21C, and this involved replacing the original R985 radial engines, of which there were two, with 4 Lycoming piston engines. Apparently, only 2 aircraft were modified, and this is one of them. These modifications took place in 1958 and 1959, and they obviously brought this airplane to the air show to market it to the public and prospective customers. As we downgauge even smaller, this is a Fletcher Fu-24. Pardon my French. The Fu-24 was an agricultural application aircraft, i.e. a sprayer, and of course, being in California, Nevada, that area, it made sense to promote the airplane at the air show. Incredibly, 297 Fu-24s were built between 1954 and, I believe, current day. This is another crop dusting airplane. It is a sprayer. It's called the Transland Ag-2, and it was built by a company called Transland Aircraft Company, based in Torrance, California. Only 3 of these crop sprayers were actually built, and in the year 2025, only 1 survived. So obviously the aircraft was at the air show to generate interest, but unfortunately it didn't meet with the commercial success that its designers had hoped for. I'm not sure if this particular aircraft was part of the air show per se. It's a vintage, even back then vintage, Model 17 Beech Stagger Wing. There were 785 Beech Stagger Wings that were produced between 1933 and 1949, and this is certainly a nice looking aircraft, but it might have just been a visitor. Maybe somebody was attending the air show and flew in on this aircraft. This is the Morane-Saulnier Paris jet. It was originally designed by the French company as a military observation and training jet aircraft. In 1955, the French aircraft builder formed a joint venture company with Beech Aircraft, of course the famous Beech manufacturer of famous American general aviation aircraft. The idea was to basically develop the world's first business jet aircraft and market it to the North American business operators of the day. This particular Paris jet was painted in a special color scheme, so that the joint venture marketing company could take the aircraft to air shows and market it to prospective customers. And hence, they brought it to the Las Vegas Airshow. The joint venture marketing company was dissolved after only a few years due to lack of customer interest, unfortunately. Here's a general view of the airshow ramp. We've got the American Electra on the left. We've got the Fairchild F-27 on the right. There's a Convair in the background, and center frame, we have what appears to be a privately owned T-33. By the late 1950s, the space race was already well in place, and North American Aviation brought their X-15 to the Las Vegas Airshow. Now, the tail number 00000, I think I got that right, is a bit of a curious fact on this aircraft. I'm not sure if this is actually a mock-up. North American, having built 3 X-15s, had fin numbers with 56-6670, 6671, and 6672. Now, I have seen models made by Topping Models of this particular airplane, as we see here in the photograph, with all the zeros on the fin number there. So I'm thinking this is probably a demonstration mock-up only. Here's a close-up photo of the nose, and as we can see, it says U.S. Air Force serial number 56-0000. So that was not one of the actual 3 aircraft built, so I think this does confirm this is strictly a mock-up that we're looking at. All of these images were scanned from original 35mm slides, and the photographer, Mr. Crimmins, has written X-15 pilots on the actual slide mount. So I don't have the names of these particular pilots, but I'm assuming that's exactly who they are. And here we have, walking center frame towards a media scrum, the famous flight test pilot Scott Crossfield. Born in 1921 in Berkeley, California, he joined the Navy as a pilot during World War II, and he flew Hellcats and F-4U Corsairs in the Pacific Theater. In 1950, he joined the NACA, which was the predecessor to NASA, and in the next 5 years, up into the mid-1950s, he flew nearly all of the experimental jet aircraft under test at Edwards Air Force Base, including the X-1, the XF-92, the X-4, X-5, and the Douglas D-558 Skystreak. As we can see here in the media scrum, he's definitely the center of peak attention and was very much a media celebrity of the day. In 1953, he had become the very first person on the planet to fly at twice the speed of sound while piloting the Skyrocket. And in 1955, he left NACA to join North American Aviation, where he was the chief engineering test pilot for the X-15 program. Of course, he was a very knowledgeable person when it came to high-speed aviation, and that certainly shows here with the media attention of the day focused on what he had to say. Just a few months after these very images were taken, on June the 8th, 1959, Crossfield completed the X-15's very first flight, and it involved an unpowered glide from 37,500 feet. The flight was troubled as the flight controls had not been set up properly, and it almost resulted in a critical destruction of both the aircraft and possible loss of life. Then on September the 17th, 1959, Crossfield actually performed the very first powered flight of the X-15. Crossfield was actually a lucky man. He experienced several very close calls on these early X-15 test flights, and he walked away from them all. Undoubtedly, he was explaining his experience in flying high-speed, jet-powered aircraft to the interesting newsmen that were present here at the Las Vegas Airshow. Another very famous aviation military personality that was present at the Las Vegas Airshow in '59 was the Commander General Curtis LeMay, seen here on the right. Commander LeMay was very famous for his efforts and guidance during World War II. It was under his command and decision-making that low-altitude, high-volume bombing of Japanese cities would be the way to turn the war and ultimately result in the Japanese surrender. And of course, this ultimately led to the dropping of the atomic bombs. As a result of the atomic bombs being dropped on Japan, Emperor Hirohito eventually signed Japan's surrender on the deck of the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay in 1945, so ending the Japanese involvement in World War II. Tragically, some 200,000 Japanese civilians lost their lives with the dropping of the atom bombs on Japan, thus ending the war. However, historians do believe that the loss of life would have been far greater had World War II continued. Interesting side note, I lived in Southern California in the late 1980s when I attended UC Irvine to get my MBA. At the time, my roommate worked as a cashier at the local Price Club, which of course today is Costco, and one of his regular customers that used to come in through his till to pay for his groceries was none other than the General Curtis LeMay. Hard to believe. Curtis LeMay passed away in 1990 at age 83. Thank you very much for watching this video. I definitely look forward to your comments. Hope you enjoyed it. Very much would appreciate the thumbs up and look forward to seeing you on my next video. Hi there, my name is Henry Tenby and I'd like to tell you about my brand new book. It's called From Lodestars to Jets, and it's the most image-heavy, comprehensive, it's the most extensive history on Air Canada, Trans-Canada Airlines that has ever been published in the annals of aviation history. The book is absolutely loaded with images that many of which have never been seen before. Let's have a look at the pages and then you can decide if this book deserves a spot on your bookshelf. I'm going to give you a little bit of a tour of the book. Isn't that gorgeous? It is printed on 105 GSM paper, so it's super high quality paper. It is absolutely loaded with images. As I say, there are approximately 600 images, just under 300 pages. Many of these images have never been seen before, and the stories that are within these pages, many of them have long been forgotten, and it is information that is absolutely fascinating relating to engineering and fleet planning and fleet development issues at Trans-Canada Airlines. Look at that Viscount wing structure design, feathering system. We've got a section on the Bristol Freighter, some face changes around TCA engineering, and then sections on the Connie. Models make moolah, of course, for you aircraft model fans. Whole sections on the Connie North Star. There we go, engineering department, 1950. Fabulous shot taken at, where's this, Cartierville. Absolutely gorgeous. And this will take you back to the good old days of Trans-Canada Airlines. As I say, I believe this is the most comprehensive history on Trans-Canada, Avro jetliner, that's right. Trans-Canada Airlines was instrumental in the development of this aircraft. Of course, up to the jet age, the introduction of service to the DC-8s, and other airplanes that were considered by TCA at the time. This is not the same old Air Canada history that we've seen many times over the decades. This is all brand new information, brand new stories. I've posted a link in the upper right-hand corner of this video that'll take you to the book information and order page. Also, I should point out that time is of the essence. Limited production on these books. Once they're sold out, they're probably sold out forever. And I hope you will enjoy the book as much as I enjoyed putting it together. Thank you very much.